Hi, I'm Ilan Mui from CNBC, and today I'm talking to Dan Ariely about the future of work and whether getting back to normal in the workplace is even possible. Hi, Dan, how are you?
Hi, my name is Dan Ariely, and I'm the James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University and the author of Predictably Irrational and a few other books. And as you might have noticed, I am also the owner of a half a beard. And if you're wondering what bet I lost, I didn't lose any bet. I was just badly burned many years ago, and most of my body is covered with burns, including the side of my face, so hence the half a beard.
Businesses say that workers don't want to come back to the jobs they used to have because of the enhanced federal unemployment benefits. The workers say, no, it's because I have fear of safety, I've got care responsibilities, or maybe I just didn't like that job all that much to begin with, and so I don't want to come back. Where do you weigh in on this, and do you think there's a way to tip the scale?
Yeah, so I this would not sound nice, but I don't trust what people say right now. You know, we're at the end of a very traumatic period. It's a very tough period. You know, this has been tough in so many ways, and so much stress, and so much uncertainty, and so on. In general, when people are stressed and anxious and worried, this is not the time for people to be reflective and understand their own motives in the best possible way. I wouldn't take that too serious. The approach of saying, you know what, you're not sure that you want to come back, why don't you come back for 2 months? Why don't you come for 2 months? If you come for 2 months, we'll improve your departure benefit. If you'll decide to leave, just give it 2 months. I think people would get back. I think that the step of coming in from the period we were with the fear and anxiety and so on, going back is just a difficult step. But if we would get people to do it for even a month or two, I think people would be very, very different on the end of that experience. So, there's lots of things that you need trial to figure out. If you go to a mattress store, you can imagine what a mattress feels like and you can lay on it for 5 minutes, but you really experience it. You need to use a mattress for a month to understand how it is. And we're talking about something that has taken a tremendous amount of time. And people don't have really good intuition now about this transition from this period to the next period. We need to try it out. And lots of things are standing in the way. It's frightening. It's effortful. We got used to doing what we do. Look, people did not stand there and have empty time. People fill their time in different ways. Now they have to give up something. So it will need adjustment. The people who did not work will need adjustment, but they need to try it out.
What are some bad decisions that you see people making as we go through this reopening process, and how can we avoid that?
One thing that I am predicting is that people don't understand how much they miss other people. And I'll give you another analogy for this, and I'm sorry, it's another analogy for my days in hospital, but I was thinking about it the other day. So when I was in hospital initially, I had a tube to feed me. And they would feed me 1 hour yes, 3 hours no, 1 hour yes, 3 hours no. So 7,000 calories a day, 30 eggs a day, because you have to pump lots of protein. I ate this way for about 4 months. And at the end, they said, hey, next week we'll take it off and we'll start eating. And I thought to myself, how uncivilized. I said, who needs this chewing? Who needs all of this activity and chewing and effort? It's so convenient and clean and effortless. Why would anybody? And I said, the future will be without chewing. The future would be everybody would go with versions of these tubes and we'll just eat. What happened was I totally forgot taste. I totally forgot what it is to taste food. And I remembered, and then I stopped about figure out that this is the future. And I think the same thing is happening to us about other people. I think we forget the joys that we have from other people. We forget the joy of getting a pat on the back and a wink. There's this beautiful research. I love this. They show that when people meet each other for the first time, they shake hands. And then almost always, almost everybody takes their hand in the next 5 minutes and smells it. And we do it unconsciously.
We smell our hands after we shake hands?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And by the way, when you ask people, do you do it? Nobody says they do it. But when you look at videos, you see people do it all the time. We're not aware of it. But the reality is you're getting a little bit of the scent of the other person and you smell them, just a little bit. Now, we're not aware of this. And I think there's lots of things like that in which we're unaware of the depth and the complexity of our social interactions. We think that it's just the words and maybe looking at your eyes and smile and so on, but there's so much more to it. And I think that much like I said, I forgot what it is to taste, I think we kind of a little bit forgot the joy, the deep joy of social interaction. We're social animals. And now this has been taken away from us and we kind of forgot what it is. But I think when people will go back to work, we'll remember.
If we've forgotten the joy that can come from being around other people, have we also forgotten maybe the creativity, inspiration, productivity that can come from being around other people? And how much do you think that's going to drive the eventual return to the office place for those white-collar workers?
I think that when offices would open up, people would say, oh, I got used to being at home, it's perfectly fine. But very quickly they would realize what they were missing and they would want to be more with other people. And I think it would improve tremendously in terms of creativity and brainstorming and camaraderie and human connection and feeling loyalty to the company and your team and so on. So it's a wonderful thing. Now, that being said, there's some really good things about working from home. Not all the time, but home does give us an environment that people should spend at home maybe a day or two a week. It's not a zero or none. But there's another risk. And the risk is that companies that will try to be nice to their employees and will say, hey, do whatever you want. What will happen is that people would very quickly move back to the office fully. Why? Imagine that we have an important meeting and 5 people are in the office and 5 people are remote and they join by video conference. The 5 people joining remote are going to be second-class citizens. They're not going to be heard. They're not going to participate. They're not going to be able to complete each other's sentences. So what will happen is that if there's a mixed model, for every important meeting, everybody would show up to the office. And very quickly, the benefit of having at least a day a week will go away. So in my lab at Duke, what my plan is to do is to give a day a week in which I ask nobody to come, so it's coordinated, and I ask people not to have meetings. Time at home is important, but people shouldn't do office work at home. They should do a different kind of work. It's not that working from home is a bad idea. It's a really good idea for some things, but we should coordinate so we can do it in a good way.